Hi everyone, my name is Zeina and I'm the manager of the interactive department at Tribeca Film Institute. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about the Institute and the festival, about the different programs that we have, and then I'm going to jump into some case studies of the projects that we have funded, why we have funded them, and a little bit about the future of the department. Tribeca Film Institute started after 9/11. Robert De Niro and Jane Rosenthal came together and they said they wanted to revive the downtown area in Manhattan because of how dead it was after 9/11. After the matter, they started out with screenings, just screening films, and then they started to support films, and then they started to have a film festival for the films that they supported, and so they moved. So at a certain point, the institute and the festival sort of split out, and the festival focused on the beast of the festival that happens every April, and the institute continued to carry out the mission and the heart with which the institute started with, which is to focus on enabling communities to tell their stories and using storytelling as a powerful medium to revive a community. So Tribeca Film Institute today funds independent artists and filmmakers who are working in traditional film and new media. We have a gender and racial equity focus, and we work with artists and filmmakers, stories and creators who are underrepresented in the media industry. We do that through 3 different programs. The artist programs funds traditional film, so scripted and documentary, also creators from underrepresented communities. The education department works in high schools and in prisons to enable these communities to tell their own stories. We also have a connected learning model which connects high school students to inmates where they co-produce films together. And finally, the interactive department, which was born in 2011 as a reaction to the changing media industry. We wanted to bring people together to explore storytelling in the digital age. When we first started, we wanted to create a sort of 360 journey for the project, from inception all the way to the stage. So we have funds that give support to these projects, incubation spaces, Tribeca hacks, and labs and retreats, where we bring different disciplines together to help them navigate the space of creating with each other. Resources, we have online platforms that work as a form of information banks for people who are just starting to enter the space. And finally, Tribeca Film Festival and the showcase, we give them the stage, the exhibition space to show their projects to a wide audience. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into every program so that maybe you can also see how it can link back to you as a creator in Chile. We have the New Media Fund, which Kipu was funded with, and I think it's one of our flagship programs. It's what the department is known for. The New Media Fund is for projects in production. So you already have a prototype, a working prototype, and you're moving on to fully produce your project. We say that it's for projects that are nonfiction, but in many cases we funded projects that were a cross-genre between fiction and nonfiction. Our main focus is that the projects are focused on social justice or address a social issue in an interesting way. The funds are between 50K and 100K, depending on what the project needs, what stage it's at, and how much we think would really help the project take the production to the next level. The second fund, which came a little bit later on, is the prototype fund. We realized that at such a new space and people needed room to experiment, to iterate, to create a prototype that will enable them to actually go on and get more funding and be eligible for funds that are for development funds or funds for in production projects. So the prototype fund is smaller, but it's for people with an idea. or just an intention in a way, and you get the money. You have to have the right team together, and you create a prototype that will eventually allow you to either apply to the New Media Fund or any other fund out there. 10K to 20K, and the prototype was for nonfiction and fiction projects, and also with a focus on social justice. So it varied the kind of projects that we funded depending on the topic and the creators. Second, the hacks and the labs. Tribeca Hacks has traveled the world. We've done small hacks and big hacks, and they're meant to bring people who come from different disciplines to work together. You would think it's an easy thing to navigate, for a filmmaker to navigate the world of a technologist or vice versa, but in many cases you're creating a new language for these different disciplines to work together. And it's really also a space for the transmedia world to understand how important it is to have these different players part of the creative process. In many cases, storytellers have a story and they develop the story and the interactive platform, or how they think the interactive platform can work, and then they go to a technologist and they say, hey, can you do this for me? And that really doesn't work, because your technologist needs to weigh in on the development of the narrative on the technological end. So these were great spaces where a lot of great projects came out, a lot of great teams came out of these spaces. Do Not Track, which Louis Richard will talk about. It's also an interactive exhibition. It started as a hackathon idea, and it went on to win a Peabody Award. And they're also for community building. When we started the department, we realized that this is a new industry and a new space where different talents are coming together. And a way to really build an industry, we needed to build a community. And along with the hacks and the labs, we usually also conduct retreats for projects that we have selected to fund, so that they can also become resources for one another. They come together for 3 days with mentors, and they share their experiences, the challenges that they're undergoing, and they try to find solutions with one another. Sandbox and immerse. I am hesitant to talk about Sandbox, but I also feel like it's an important thing to talk about. It is severely outdated, so if you are developing a project today, maybe you don't want to go there. But we are working on reviving that platform in 2018 and making it more relevant to how much the media has changed today. But Sandbox is a place where you go to really get a general overview of interactive media, what's out there already, what's working, our programs and how you can participate in them, and how to build an interactive project, how to put together a budget, what kind of talent you need on your team, what's the production schedule like. It's already different than a film. How does that work? So it's really a space, like an information bank for people who are starting in the space to get an insight into how to build a project. And then more recently, we started Immerse.news, which is a publication on Medium where we partnered with MIT Open Doc Lab and the Fledgling Fund. And it's a space where practitioners and experts in the field are having the conversation around nonfiction, emerging practices, and transmedia. You know, what's the whole empathy and VR discussion, gender gaps in transmedia. So it's really a wide range of issues that are related to the space. People also can sort of submit reaction pieces to these issues, and it's a space where you can also find out what events you need to be attending all over the world, what kind of funds you might want to look at, and so on. And finally, Tribeca Film Festival, which is one of the most exciting parts for any creator. We started off with what we called Interactive Day, and it was split between a conference and a playground. The conference was for people who are practicing or creating projects in new media to come and tell the audience their experience, their challenges, and sort of inspire the audience to jump into that world. The playground is an exhibition space that did not necessarily focus on story, but it focused on technology, art, and storytelling. So you could have a project that was just moving objects. And the spirit with which this playground was created is, as the name suggests, for people to come in and play and get inspired. If you have an idea for a story, you might see some kind of technology and think, oh, that could be a great thing for my story. And we wanted to level the playing field. So we exhibited students, thesis projects, and really high talent, like the previous VR director from Google, or really high talent. And the way they sat next to each other really inspired the younger emerging talent and also created a really interesting conversation around the space. Oops. Yeah, we have way more exhibitions. I need to talk about those as well. We have Storyscapes, which was also one of our biggest exhibitions. Many of the new media projects sort of find their way to that space. It's focused on story-led immersive installations. So it's a little bit bigger in terms of projects from the playground. The focus was really on the story and creating interactive and immersive experiences around that. And then more recently, like maybe 2 years ago, the Tribeca Film Festival started the VR Arcade, which focuses on VR, because so much of VR became this really happening medium, and there was a lot being done in that space, and so we wanted to create sort of a critical conversation around it. So in the past 6 years, we have done 24 hackathons in over 16 cities internationally. We've funded 31 projects, actually a little bit more than that. We've given out $2 million in grants, and we host over 3,000 attendees at the Tribeca Film Festival every year. I'm going to jump into case studies, and the next 4 projects I'm going to talk about might give you the impression that we only fund VR, but that's totally not the case. I only chose them because 2 of these pieces are, as Maria Ignacia mentioned, are in the interactive exhibition here in Chile. But also I took the opportunity to discuss 2 other virtual reality experiences, because I wanted to show how you could use that same medium to tell different stories, and how the medium sort of came was informed by the story and the process. It wasn't that these creators were like, I want to do a VR project, but the story sort of led them there. And so I'm going to start with 6x9. The Guardian started this project because they had been covering solitary confinement in the United States for quite some time. And they realized that there are over 80,000 to 100,000 people who are in solitary confinement. They also realized, after covering that topic for a while, that it wasn't easy to create a conversation around the rights of criminals. People weren't very receptive to it or didn't feel that engaged with it. And so they went on a full-fledged research. They interviewed inmates, and they they researched with psychologists on the effect of solitary confinement on the mind and how much damage it was creating in these people's minds. And so they realized also that how do you get an audience engaged in something that they just have been dismissive of for a while? And the idea of being in a 6x9 foot space might be maybe not that easy for anyone to imagine, but it's quite claustrophobic. And because a big part of that story was the actual space, it made sense for them to then jump into a virtual reality experience where the space was created in 6x9. So they researched what a 6x9 cell actually looks like from research from talking to inmates, from talking to prisons, to researchers, and they recreated the space in a CGI, computer generated, and they tried to maintain the integrity of their journalism. So there was a lot of ethics that came into this creation. At the end of the day, it's in virtual reality, and it's a total journalism piece. And I'm actually just going to show you a video, and then I'll keep talking about it. Lights. This is sort of a flattened visual of the 6x9 room. There should be sound. But it's okay, I can talk over the video, that's actually quite fine. What you're seeing in their research, what they found out is that people in solitary confinement, yeah, it's the highest, start to experience hallucinations, they start to see the walls moving, they start to hear things, they experience a sense of floating body. And so what they did in that experience, actually I'm just going to stop it. What they, if we can get the lights, it would be great. So what they did in this 9-minute experience was simulate these experiences for the users. So you saw the information about solitary confinement was delivered to you in sort of hallucinogenic images, and you had the sense of floating, and you get really close to the ceiling. And it's, you know, VR has been criticized for like having discomforting feelings, like you get really motion sickness, or for many people it's really uncomfortable, and they use that for their advantage because of how uncomfortable it actually is to be in a 6x9 room for 4 years, 8 years, and in many cases even longer than that. So space was really the core of this piece. The space was the heart of the story, and so that the space really determined the technology that they used, or the platform with which they delivered this journalistic piece. The next project is Notes on Blindness. It's also exhibited in the interactive exhibition. Notes on Blindness. So John Hall is about the story of John Hall, and he was a philosopher and a writer who in the early 80s started to lose his sight. And he started to document that experience by recording audio diaries, because he wanted to show the visual world, or the viewing world, what it was like to go blind, or what was the experience of blindness. And so they created a documentary on his experience based on the audio, but it was a visual experience, and it was a linear documentary. But Arnaud Collinard and Amaury Laburt got together, and they wanted to actually bring his audio files to life. And they wanted to position us inside the head of John Hall and experience what he was experiencing in terms of losing vision. And what a lot of his audio diaries were saying was that because he couldn't see anymore, sound became very pertinent. And so he visualized by hearing. When he heard something moving on this side, he could sort of tell, what could it be? Is it rain? What is it hitting on? Is it the ground? Is it the wall? What could it be? So his visual senses were transmitted to sound. And I'm actually just going to show you a video, and I hope the audio works. because it's important here. Yeah, awesome.
This is cassette 1, track 1, Notes on Blindness. Sitting in the park with the children, I hear the footsteps of people walking past me, rustling of the newspaper, murmur of conversation. The myriad voices and sounds create a panorama of music and information. Where there is no activity, there's no sound, and then that part of the world dies. The earliest experience of panic took place in the middle of December. I left the house but had only gone about 100 yards when I was aware of a growing feeling of doubt and uncertainty, as if I was banging my head, my whole body against the wall of blindness. As one goes deeper into blindness, the things which once one took for granted, then tried desperately to compensate for, in the end, cease to matter. I think I am beginning to understand what it's like to be blind.
So here in this project, the main character was almost the sound, and they created the whole environment with that. And they positioned us in a world of darkness, and they allowed for the visuals to come to life with gentle light and sort of a poetic visual language. The next project is a project that you're going to hear about from two sides today. I'm going to talk about a little bit about why the reasons why we funded it, and then Louis Richard from the NFB is going to talk about producing it and going through the process with the creator from inception to the finish line. In many of the projects that we fund, we are interested in projects that are creating new ways to interact with an issue, or new ways to express or explore an issue, rather than projects that are creating new technology. So The Enemy is a great example of that. Karim Ben Khalifa was a war photographer for 15 years, and he came to realize that people were desensitized to images from war. Yeah, we saw violence and people dying and people on fire, but there was still something that was lost in the sense of like we were not getting real insights into the experience of war, or who were the people behind these weapons and what were their experiences like with war. So he started off with a photo exhibition and felt still that people were not necessarily responding to the material as intensely or as deeply as he wanted them to. And so he transformed that into a virtual reality experience where you put on a headset and you are right in the middle between soldiers who are on opposing sides of long-lasting conflicts. The three developed conflicts are Israel and Palestine, El Salvador, and the Congo. And you step into the VR experience and you sort of are cued by these soldiers to approach either one. And the closer you get, you start to experience their story, what their dreams are, what they're afraid of. And you start to understand that these two enemies at the end of the day had very similar human characteristics, similar dreams, similar drives to be in the war. And so I'm just going to jump to the video and then I will also speak a little bit more about it.
Wow.
Get too close to really phenomenal.
The enemy was born out of my frustration as a photojournalist and war correspondent. For almost 20 years, I have photographed conflicts and witnessed the consequences of huge geopolitical shifts. When I became a father, I simply knew I could not keep working on the front lines. Yet, I was not done trying to understand wars.
Mina ba uwaka juu nabo banani uwaka.
My friends in Israel, when they know I'm heading for Gaza, can't help themselves but to wish me luck and to stay safe. They believe a lot of people in Gaza are irrational. Also, when I spend weeks working in Gaza and I'm about to return to Israel, my Palestinian friends are telling me the exact same thing. Be careful there. The project is rooted in my experience as a war photographer, going from one side of the front line to the other, and finding that the fighters' dreams, hopes, and nightmares are often more similar than they are different. So there is a bigger story than the war itself, and this is the one I want to explore and share. For the enemy, I am using the latest technologies in virtual and augmented realities, so you can engage directly with the combatants and meet them, hear them, and feel them the way I did. In many parts of our world, you create an enemy as a kid without having met your enemy, because the society around you has created an enemy in the other. So the question is, could I be you if I was on the other side?
The really exciting thing about this project is that you not only enter the experience and change your idea about war and war soldiers, but so you sort of negotiate with yourself what an enemy means, what your personal biases are. Many people enter the space and maybe have a hard time approaching one soldier or the other, but also that is in many ways telling about them than it is telling about these soldiers. And this project is an embodiment. It embodies the idea of what an enemy means. And it also focuses on embodied learning, and being in a space and moving. And through that, you really start to learn and negotiate certain ideas and experiences. The last project I want to talk about is called Blackout. We just recently funded this project this year, and it was also, actually all these projects were at Storyscapes, which is funny. Blackout came at a time when the United States was negotiating a lot with itself what it meant to be American. And New York City is a great example of a diverse city living sort of in cohesion. So the people at Scatter, which is an immersive studio based in New York City, wanted to explore that idea of what it meant to be American from people coming from all over the world with different backgrounds. And the subway is a great place where people from different demographics and different social backgrounds sort of are put together. You can be homeless and you can be an executive. You're likely gonna probably take the subway at a certain point and be in the same space with people who you would probably not interact with on your daily basis. And I live in New York and I take the subway every day to work, and when I'm sitting in the subway, it's like I'm either wondering what people are thinking or I'm wondering what they're thinking about me. So they took that idea, and if you talk to New Yorkers and people who take the subway, which you guys also have the metro, that's a pretty common idea. That's a pretty common experience where people start to imagine where this person is going, or pair two people together. They would actually work. So they took that idea, and I'm gonna let them tell you in their words, and then I'll talk a little bit about that as well.
The diversity of this city is its most attractive quality. Sharing close physical space with strangers makes me curious about the lives of the people around me. If I could read their minds, what would that reveal about them? And how would it surprise me? Blackout is a virtual reality film that makes this possible. When the train stalls and the lights go out, you find yourself gifted with the power of telepathy.
Somebody does definitely smell one here. Or maybe it's just the train.
The people who see me in my day-to-day life, they don't even know who I am.
People stop, especially here in New York. You have to put on a little coat of armor when you walk outside.
I need a better punchline for this joke. Maybe if I...
Featuring interviews and portraits of real people from around the world, Blackout gives you access to the internal thoughts of strangers.
Wow, that's crazy.
Blackout is a documentary film that's set in a 3D environment or a video game environment. So you're enabled to explore the other passengers in the train and to sort of choose your own adventure.
A new emerging way to think about filmmaking for virtual reality is a technique called volumetric filmmaking. In this technique, you're actually capturing a full person that can then be put into a virtual environment.
There are no tools that exist right now to do this kind of work, and so we had to create a whole tool set that allows you to do this.
In order to tell the story of Blackout, we created Depth Kit. Depth Kit combines depth sensors with HD cameras to create cinematic 3D models. This allows us to place real people in our virtual train.
You can view that character from absolutely anywhere. You can walk around them, you can move around them. It's like they're there.
The level of interactivity with the characters, the way that it enables you to immerse yourself into the story, you're able to explore the inner worlds of your other passengers in a way that isn't possible with screen-based storytelling.
I'm just gonna end it there. So as the video explained, they really wanted to capture these people and how they move, because that was a great testament to who their identities are, and in the landscape that we are in today, it was very important. So in order to create this virtual environment, they needed to create a technology that actually captured these people in full 3D. The project was at the Tribeca Film Festival this year, and New Yorkers were really moved by this experience because it reassured them as Americans in many ways that somewhere they still had a place in that country. So what kind of projects are we looking for, or what do we look for in a project? As these 4 projects, we look for narratives that are challenging the status quo in a way. The projects that are trying to change a conversation around a certain topic. We focus on social justice, and it's really important for us that the creators know their story and know why they're telling the story. And as Damien talked about already, and as I had already mentioned, the team with which you come to a transmedia or interactive media project with is really important. At any given project, I feel requires at least 3 people. A storyteller and a designer and a technologist. These are really important things that we look at when we are sifting through applications for our funds or for our festival, which I think I failed to mention earlier. Our funds are international, so anyone from all over the world can actually apply. And it's important for us to maintain a global view on this medium and any kind of issue, because this is how we think a more connected world can be created. So many people ask me, what is next for TFI Interactive in the age that we are in today? I don't mean to get very political, but unfortunately, the arts are under attack in the United States, and we are in a transitional period in the department. And for me and for us to be able to think about the future, we need to think about what we are up against now. And we are up against many things, and I think many of you can add to this plethora of things that we are up against. And so we are gonna be moving more and more into community-based stories, much like the Kipu project. We want projects that are told by the communities about their issues. We are tired of hearing about communities, about possible issues that they would be experiencing. And this is why one of the big programs that we have already started and we are adding is the collab, which is basically a hackathon on steroids. It's a combination of community collaboration and the lab. It brings together people from specific communities to explore the issues of their own communities and create media projects that address these issues, but also maybe have a social impact on the people who are facing any of these issues. And the next one we have, or the most recent one, or then the upcoming collab is happening in December, and it's an immigration collab. It's sort of in response to all that's happening now in terms of who's allowed in or outside a specific country and the tightening of borders. And we want to assemble people from this really exciting new space to explore that idea and think about ways that can be resources or change makers within really very pressing social issues. So if you know anyone who would be interested in participating, we are encouraging people who are based in New York or based in the United States so that they can unpack the issues that are in the United States. So if you know anyone who would be interested or would be a great fit for this collab, please come see me afterwards and we can talk more logistics about it. And I'm gonna end there. Gracias.